Ready. I think it's 10 a.m. and looks like all the interested parties are here. So if you're ready, we can start in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good morning and welcome to the Appeals Hearing Board meeting for February 21st, 2024. Vice Chair Milich, when you're ready.
We're ready.
Okay.
Call to order, please. May we, the Appeals Hearing Board and roll call vote who are here.
Okay. Board Member Chang,
Here.
Board Member Milich,
Here.
and Board Member Glenser.
Present.
Okay, let the record reflect that all 3 board members, or excuse me, 2 board members and 1 alternate are present.
All right. First item on the consent agenda, the approval of the minutes, we're going to break them out into separate motions because I was not present during the second one and can't vote. So-
Pardon my interruption, Chair Milich. There is a script that Clerk Salas needs to read so that the public knows how to join remotely and have
Oh,
public
I'm
comments if necessary. Yeah, just a little bit of a.
For information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on this meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. Remote commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you are connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chambers, we ask attendees to keep phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. And as always, thank you for participating in your city government.
All right. On the consent agenda, on the minutes of August 28th, 2023, are there any additions or corrections? We have a motion for approval.
So moved.
I wasn't at that meeting.
All right, then I'll second it. It has been moved and approved. All those in favor, roll call.
Okay, on the minutes of August 28th, 2023, Board Member Chang,
Yes.
Board Member Milich,
Yes.
and Board Member Glenser.
Abstain.
The motion passes 2-0.
Regarding the minutes of December 15th, 2023, do we have any comments, additions, corrections to those minutes? We have a motion for approval.
I move that we approve.
Second.
Okay, let's do a roll call vote.
Yes.
Board Member Chang,
Yes.
Board Member Milich,
Abstain.
and Board Member Glenser.
Yes.
Okay, the minutes of December 15th, 2023 passes with 2-0 votes.
At this time, we have general public comments for any item that is not on the agenda and that is in the subject matter jurisdiction of this board. Please have your comments, if you make any, to 3 minutes or less. Is there anybody from the general public who wants to comment on matters not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll close the public comments.
Just so you know, there's no one online as well.
All right, sorry, thank
No
you.
worries.
Item number 3, the appeal of Kyle Shanks, Taurus Leasing Company of the Forestry Division decision to deny the application for removal of a Monterey cypress at 222 Ramona Avenue, not a project under CEQA implementation guidelines, Article 20, Section 15378, and Article 5, Section 15061. We have a presentation by staff.
We do. And as a preliminary matter, I'll state for the record that my role here as city attorney is to advise the Appeals Hearing Board. I have had no contact or interaction with forestry staff or the assistant city attorney on this matter. We keep a due process ethical screen in place so that it's a fair hearing and a fair process. So I have not communicated with the assistant city attorney on this matter to ensure due process.
All right, staff have a presentation. And please state your name and for the record. And your position.
Hello, my name's Tice. Work for the City of Monterey as an assistant forester for the Parks and Rec Department. Thank you for all for coming. Yeah, we did get an application from the appellants to remove this cypress tree that you see in front of you at 222 Ramona Avenue. Be a short presentation, but just want kind of our main points that I'll touch on just beforehand is that this is for all intents and purposes a healthy tree, a tree that we feel is worth protecting and preserving, given the limited, especially given the limited canopy cover in the part of town that it's in. The appellants did support an arborist report, which we fully acknowledge and fully actually agree with. There's nothing in the arborist report we are contesting. As you can see, the size of the tree, these are all notes provided in the arborist report. The issues of concern is included bark. And just for those who don't know, included bark is in the different areas where you have maybe the crotch of a tree or the trunk is where those branches start to grow closer together and you have bark that's in between those branches. So that's not holding wood. That is kind of a weak point because that's bark that's in between those branches instead of actual holding wood there. So, and we do understand that that tree has potential for that included bark in there. The relative severity of it, we don't know. It's something you'd have to look further into. In the arborist report also, they pointed out gophers potentially undermining the tree. Again, where we saw the same thing and the pictures obviously illustrate that there's gophers in that area. There's utility lines above, below, parked vehicles, uplifting sidewalks, plenty of issues. Not going to argue anything about that. However, what we are, and here's some photos showing the inside of the tree, the gopher holes identified by the authors of the arborist report. Our main issue, the main point here is that this is a tree that can be where mitigation options can take place. These are all things that can potentially be done by a tree service and or landscaping or however to make this a much less risky situation. Gophers, for example, I work in the Parks Department in the past. We abate gophers quite a bit. That's a big part of it, and I do so at my house as well. So that's something you can take control over. If you do see evidence of gophers, you can take action. The tree too, it does not look like it had very many upon our inspection. Looked like there was many old cuts. So it doesn't show like there was a history of pruning, and pruning is an important part, especially with a Monterey cypress. It is something that you, unless you're out in the open forest, you do need to take give attention to and provide and invest some resources in preserving this tree, cypress tree especially, because limbs can be overextended, get too heavy, and snap off. But it looks like that this tree has not exhibited a whole lot of pruning. Looks like some pruning on the side to the neighbor to the south, where there's a car. Is it a car repair? Car repair shop. So it looks like some has done to make clearance for there, but inside the tree, there's still a lot of dead wood, a lot of weight reduction that can happen to preserve this tree, to make it less likely to any kind of limb failure or full tree failure. And our last point that we want to make is, again, what I've already touched on is this part of the city has very little tree cover. So from between Highway 1, Del Monte, Casa Verde, that kind of almost triangular shape of town. It's mostly concrete. It's one of our fewer industrial type parts of town. So to have a tree with a sizable canopy like that is worth preserving in our eyes in terms of the benefit to our ecosystem and overall forest health. Right here, I kind of highlight one of the standards that we look at when we're looking at trees. The value and importance of the tree on the site in the community based on such factors as the service as a part of windbreak system, its assistance in drainage or in the avoidance of soil erosion, its service as a component of the wildlife habitat, or its role in maintaining the existing urban forest. And then on the last slide, I just quickly highlighted some of the more obvious tree canopy covers in that general area that is not in the city right of way or Caltrans. So you can see at the bottom, we do have a row of trees that are going along the highway I did highlight one tree that's along Del Monte at the top. That's a city tree. We do have some smaller city trees too. So in terms of privately owned trees, it's pretty minimal. And also to be noted, not that that really, as this is as no, they're not responsible for this, but just above where Ramona is, I believe that's a planning project down the road, and that those trees are going to be lost to a project, unfortunately. They will have to replant though, and I think that's going to be handled obviously through the planning department. So yeah, you can see that we have very limited tree cover in this area. So for us, it is high value to protect a tree that has, especially of good health, and in an area of where we do need some trees. So with that, I'll leave it to questions or.
Anybody from the board, you have any questions, Ken?
I do have a couple of questions. Thank you for the presentation. Clear, very, very, very clear. So I have a couple of short questions, if that's okay with y'all.
Sure.
The arborist report, if I'm remembering correctly, did a rating on the tree and a scale of 1 to 12, with 12 being the riskiest, and 1 being the least risky, and rated at 11. And you didn't, can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, so it is on the high side. So anything 9 and above is technically high risk. So it is easy to, unfortunately, it is easy to get to that number because it is so close to pedestrian right of way, because it's near where cars are parked, because it's so close to that building. Easily, as soon as you start scoring it, it will instantly, even regardless of its structure, it will likely have probably reach that number 9, for instance, and reach that high risk value number. So along with a tree and what he notes about the gopher activity, possible included bark, yeah, naturally that will increase that value.
All right. So to make sure I understand, so you don't disagree with that rating system and having it end up being 11, but what you're saying, I'm just trying to make sure I understand. What you're saying is that reaching that 11 doesn't have a great deal to do, if anything, with the actual health of the tree. It's kind of collateral.
No, I would say it does have a little bit to do with the health, but in this instance, it's easy when you start bringing in those more objective features, being close to buildings, cars, what have you. Even if you don't look at the health of the tree, that value is still going to reach the high number likely. So yeah, and also that, like I said, the health of the tree, it's not necessarily in question here. It's more that the structural issues. It's more the structure of the tree. So
All right, great.
yeah.
And then I have a couple of other questions that I'm not sure you can answer, but that they're on my mind. I'm curious about the whole sidewalk issue and the uplifting of the sidewalk. And I'm actually interested in if someone were to trip or get injured on that sidewalk, is that a liability issue for anybody?
So under the city's sidewalk order, if an uplift is caused by a private tree, so not a city-owned tree, a private tree, it's still the responsibility of that private property owner to maintain the sidewalk. So, I mean, I haven't gone out and looked at this sidewalk, but there are things that can be done without removing a tree. And we do this regularly for city trees or city sidewalks, including shaving the root to mitigate and then be able to bring down the sidewalk. So you can also grind the uplift on the sidewalk so that it, is more a smooth. So there are things that can be done regarding a sidewalk uplift caused by a tree root, short of removing a tree.
But that wasn't part of your inspection, is that correct?
We did notice the uplift.
I know you noticed it.
Yeah, but no,
that's not part of what your job is to.
No, unless it's brought to me, but yeah, and I'll just add, yeah, pruning the roots sometimes. And like she said, shaving down the concrete so there's a smooth transition. But yeah, that wasn't necessarily what the issue was
Okay.
here, but yeah, that's something also, again, that we feel that can be mitigated.
All right, I'm done.
Member Chang, you have any questions?
You made a sort of a broad argument that the tree fits into a ecosystem and that's why it should be protected. I mean, would you use that argument for essentially any tree that's within the city? Is that kind of how that goes? Just because of the way the rules are written, it's pretty broad. You've got is there anything particular about this tree? Because it's down an alley. If you walk, a couple hundred feet toward the coast, there's a forest there essentially by the trail. So I mean,
Somewhat. I would
Yeah.
say that we're still, we don't want gaps. We don't want large,
Okay.
extenuating expanses of our city to go without some level of tree cover. Especially if we're talking about bird habitat, whatnot. We do want some sort of connection. Obviously, it's never be perfect here. It will never, we're not looking to look at this area be fully covered in canopy, but if it has some, it's still worth preserving. And for us, if we feel it is a healthy tree, we want to make sure that everything's done possible to protect that tree as well. So I hope that answers.
that's okay.
Is there anybody, the applicant, have any questions of witness? The applicant here? Any questions of the witness? No? Okay, you're excused. Thank you. Next witness, please. You have one?
No, the department's concluded its presentation. So appellant is here for theirs.
Good morning. My name is Kyle Shanks. I'm the president of the Forest Leasing Company.
Okay. Thank you, City Forester, for the presentation. I would say we certainly don't disagree with much of what was said there or much of the reasons for the denial. It's just one point I would like to make, and just a little bit of background, though. Taurus Leasing Company, we own a good portion of that industrial section that Tice mentioned in Monterey. And as a matter of fact, as of about 10 years ago, that was in pretty poor condition with very few tenants and very little economic activity flowing through it. And it's been the result of this management's work to really revitalize that industrial area to the point where we've invested millions of dollars and we now have 20 plus small businesses operating out of our properties. And there's millions of dollars flowing into the Monterey economy as a result of that. And we like to think of ourselves as good neighbors and responsible property owners. And that's really what has led to the request to remove this tree. And let me talk a little bit more about why. So there's 3 risks here that we see with this cypress tree. Failure of the tree leading to the entire tree coming down, which was certainly addressed by the city forester. It's also the tripping hazard caused by the tree roots lifting the sidewalk. And we don't believe this was sufficiently addressed by the city forester's denial reasons. There's also risk of damage to the water meter and water utility service line as well. And this neither was addressed by the city forester. Okay, so here's a look at the lifting of the sidewalk. It's a potential liability, right, to us as the property owner and of course to the general public. And it's a liability that may only be addressed in our view by removing the tree. Significant thinning in our view would over time just likely increase the root growth and just bring back the same problem that we would then have to spend more money a second time to correct. Okay, so just as some evidence here, this is a screen grab of our arborist report. And you can see down there at the bottom, exploding the recommendation that the tree in question is uplifting the sidewalk, grows directly above a sewer and water main, and is recommended for removal. And here is highlighting the reasons for the denial by the city forester. And you can see that it doesn't mention the lifting sidewalk nor directly counter that point. So as the city attorney mentioned earlier, this is the section of the sidewalk code that does put the liability on Taurus Leasing Company as a property owner if or rather for maintaining that sidewalk. And I believe the last part of section 32, which I didn't put in this presentation, speaks to the liability being on the property owner if someone were to injure themselves tripping on that uplifted sidewalk. So it's certainly something that we have a very significant interest in maintaining and correcting that lifted portion of the sidewalk. Okay, here's a few more shots of the sidewalk. You can see the lifting there circled in red. Here's for a little bit of perspective. So there's a couple inches of lift there next to that lighter. And here is another portion caused by the uplifting tree roots there. A little bit farther down that sidewalk, and that's taller than that lighter. So that's a pretty high rise. Okay, also risk of damage to the water meter and water utility service line, which would likely either be the local water district needing to pay and correct that and possibly coming to us for compensation for causing it. So it's a potential liability again to the various parties. And removing the tree is going to allow for preventative measures to make sure that that never becomes an issue. And this is the water meter directly in front of the tree on the sidewalk. And this is actually, if you open up that water meter box there, you can see roots starting to grow inside of it. Okay, so in conclusion, Taurus Leasing Company is an organization that proactively limits liabilities. And that's my job as its president. And we're looking here to proactively meet obligations to the general public, to our shareholders, and to our tenants by removing this tree so we can properly maintain that sidewalk. We don't believe that thinning of the tree is going to allow us to do that properly. And we really just want to get in front of any emergency repairs and potential litigation in the future here. And that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Hey,
Oh,
thank you.
and pardon me, that packet that the clerk handed out here is other trees on our properties there. And yeah, the idea there is to show you how we take a lot of responsibility for the upkeep of a good portion of the last remaining industrial triangle in Monterey. And that is really what all the other trees on our site look like. They're very pruned and well maintained. And so we just want to show that we're not just cavalier coming out asking to remove this tree without putting any thought or effort into our contributions here to the community.
Nice presentation. Is there any questions? The board have any questions of the gentleman? Questions?
I've got a question, but it's probably not for Kyle. It may be for the city. Should I do that now?
Yeah.
The question I have based on this presentation is, I wonder if we could have a comment from the city about the question of the water meter and the sewer line, which weren't addressed. Kyle, you're right.
Should be on. Yeah, so they are there, they're present. Unfortunately, unless it's shown to be a problem, it's not something that's going to be addressed. If there is roots that are uplifting or showing that they are undermining or wrapping around a line, then yes, we will definitely work with somebody on trying to, as an issue that needs to be addressed. But unfortunately, right now, it's just being that they're present. So the water meter's present, that we understand that, and it's nearby, probably in a precarious spot right now. But until we see that the roots are actually starting to become a problem, then we would address that. But just the fact that they're there wouldn't alone be the reason for us to want to take the tree out. And that happens. This is a very common occurrence. And same thing with the sidewalk. We understand the uplifts there, but again, it's something that could be mitigated, and potentially the water line. It would be an undertaking if it became a problem, but yeah, we have done that before. Would not be easy. Would be very definitely a challenging task if it became a problem like that.
So okay, what can you just give me some kind of a opinion about the this root intrusion into those systems based on your experience? I understand that what you're saying is they're not intruding right now, they are present. What's the history of these kinds of trees and their roots and sewer lines and so on and so forth? What's the,
I don't know if I could give a level of prevalence. I mean, it is something we've dealt with. It's definitely something that comes up. I don't know if it will for sure happen. It's not something that we can just just assume that it will. But if it does, obviously, then we have a bigger problem. And most likely, if it did impact their water line, we would most likely approve them to remove the tree because it is so close to that tree itself. It's most likely going to have a significant root because the water line does go down deep. It does go underneath the tree. The amount of roots that you're going to have to cut just to get to where the problem area is, probably it would be something we'd approve. But right now, being that it's not an issue,
Yeah.
But if we did approve all the trees that were near a water line or near a gas line, we would lose quite a bit, as you would imagine. So that's the reason why we don't take too much of a taking. I don't know how to put it, but we approve all the trees that are near a utility line
yeah,
that
but
we
the
remove.
standard I'm hearing is wait until there's actually a documented intrusion, not just a potential
Right.
of intrusion. And then my next question is, should that be the case, who's financially responsible for all that sewer and water work?
I'm not sure I can answer that.
I'm sorry, if you have to do something with,
No, that's okay. I can potentially answer this. So
Okay.
ordinarily, if there's tree roots invading a sewer line, it's because the sewer line has holes in it or is defective, and then the roots are attracted to go in there, as opposed to like the tree root damaging the sewer line. And then I would just also redirect the board to the grounds on which you can render your decision. It's on packet page 21, listed out there at the bottom. You can take into consideration visual prominence and the value and importance of the tree's contribution to the aesthetic beauty of the area, evidence or testimony about anxiety caused by the tree, and the acceptance of mitigation measures. So from a city code standpoint, the sidewalk issue is dealt with separately through the Public Works Department. A letter will be sent to the property owner to repair. Typically, a request is made that repairs be done to the sidewalk within 2 weeks. An extension of time can be granted if necessary. And if the property owner does not take remedial action to that defect, then the city can repair it and lien the property. So, and based on what we've seen today, I'll be sure that our Public Works Department is aware that this is a separate issue that needs to be addressed, but it's not pertinent to the appeal today.
Would it fit within the third prong? Associated with liability and potential anxiety, financial anxiety for the appellant?
I haven't heard that. There might be evidence or testimony of that. I haven't heard that yet.
That's how you
Mhm.
draft it if you want to go down that line of questioning.
Mhm, mhm.
I think you can.
If he,
You done, Ken, or I had a question for him?
I'll cede for the moment. Go ahead.
Hey, if you had to take off your city hat for a second, just be a member of the community, would you consider this tree to be aesthetically beautiful or an attractive tree? I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I mean, I am biased though. My background's in forestry and I've been part of it a long time. So I might look at it through a slightly different lens. I have to admit, I'm biased about it, and also I would say it's not just the aesthetics, but the also overall biomass of the tree.
okay.
We are looking at thinning it, but that's another thing that I look at too. It's I did see some pictures which are beautifully maintained as they pointed out, but not the same type of biomass that this has, which that biomass helps. Like I said, I'm putting on a with the ecosystem. I know that's not something we're big on, but at the same time, does play a role with the size of that tree.
And I appreciate it. You're a member of the public too. And so just getting an understanding of how the community feels about
Sure.
these sorts of things.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
thank you.
Before you go, will the roots continue to grow and will the uplift of the sidewalk continue? If
Uh,
things are left as they are?
Yes, if they're left that they are, yes. Depends on how it gets handled. If the tree stays, and like I said, it depends if you grind the roots. If you grind the roots, that's an option. If you prune the roots, if we pull up the concrete and you look underneath and you figure out which ones are the culprit roots there, we have an idea of what we're dealing with. If you could prune those, and then you buy yourself quite a bit more time versus grinding the roots, which is more of a temporary fix, but still is a shorter term solution.
And who's responsible for doing that? Is
The owner of the tree. And yeah,
And if he doesn't or she doesn't do that and something happens, then that individual, the city or at least individual will be held liable for the damages.
that would be fine.
Well, the city, under the sidewalk code, and the city attorney mentioned this, I mean, if it's impacting the sidewalk, which is in the right of way, the city will notify the property owner to do the work. If they don't, which in this case would potentially include, grinding the roots or whatever, then the city, to address the problem, can go in and do the work and lien the property, and
What
we
if I'm
do that.
walking down the street and I trip and fall over an extended route or where our lifted sidewalk?
Mhm.
Who is responsible for that sidewalk, the city or the landowner?
So in that situation, it likely would end up being both, but the city would argue the vast majority of that liability is on the private property owner where it's a private tree. Sorry, I have something in my eye. I'm not crying. So
Okay.
we litigate a lot of those cases with private trees. We have some right now, and this case law is pretty clear that it's the owner of the tree.
That's what the code section seems to indicate.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Questions, Ken?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir. Do, we'll open it up to the public. Are there any comments, Alicia, online for people who want to comment on this? No, excuse me. You want to add something?
Yeah, I work for the same company.
Oh, come on up. Tell us who you are, what you do.
Good morning. My name's Dave Byrne. I'm CFO for the Taurus Leasing Company. And I work closely with Kyle on all of our liability issues. I also have a background as an environmental land manager and restoration ecologist. So I'm familiar with these types of things. I just wanted to get a few statements of fact in here. When the city forester was addressing the impact of the tree roots to the water line, it was about 3 years ago that we actually replaced our water line, not interacted with the city, but the main water line that goes into the property and serves those 7 units that are on that property. Excuse me. And the way we did that was I'm not sure of the details because I wasn't involved in that part of it, but we were able to replace our damaged water line, and the water line was damaged from the roots of the tree. So we see this as an ongoing issue that we'll have to continue to repair and replace that water line. Additionally, the sewage is not directly under the tree in the same way that the water line is. It is offset from the tree by only about 3 foot from the northern edge there, or I guess the southern edge there, toward the Roberts Collision property. So the gas line as well is on that corner of the property, some distance from the tree, an additional foot, maybe 4 to 5 foot from that edge of the tree. Certainly a concern for us as the tree continues to grow It's a 45-inch diameter tree with a very large root system. So those three utility pieces are all of concern. The water supply line is actively continues to be damaged, and all we can do, unless we can take the tree out to arrest the growth, all we can do is plan to replace that water line in the future when it becomes a problem. For the gas line, we think it's a matter of time before there's some kind of emergency. We have no way of really monitoring that. I suppose we could excavate the gas line, but we're getting into some pretty kind of emergency-based actions instead of preventative actions, which we always prefer to be preventative as much as possible. And the sewage line is in that same category as the gas line, where we think that it's just a matter of time before we have a sewage backup emergency that's going to require us to go in and replace that entire line. Now, all of those systems are our systems on our property that we're responsible for, and we will do whatever it takes to keep those systems in good working order. Being able to remove this tree gives us the ability to arrest the situation, so that the work that we do as we continue to update all of our properties will be in place for will be stable, and so that we don't have to continue going in and repairing and replacing these utility
So
infrastructure.
basically, your position is an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Is what you're
Precisely.
saying. Are there any questions, this gentleman?
Do you guys hold a general liability policy if someone tripped on the sidewalk?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we're well insured. Still the best policy is
Yeah.
reduce liabilities. And the physical liability of the sidewalk lift is another thing that we just see as it's a matter of time. We can at our expense, we can solve the issue, and it's just going to come back again. So whatever we plan in our budgeting process needs to take that into account. The best thing is to take care of the problem, work with the forester to put whatever kind of new tree in there. And we have a little bit of room to place that tree in a better spot and to make a selection that, yes, it's true, won't have the same canopy cover, and therefore wouldn't be a Monterey cypress. There is a Monterey cypress on an adjacent property to ours, and it has a beautiful 7-foot buffer all around it. If it were up to me, I would make the sidewalk go around the beautiful cypress tree that we have. And I love the tree and would love to keep it. This whole thing started because we were, going through and maintaining all of our trees. The question of pruning the cypress, we know that it needs to be pruned. And we're, going to do that if we get denied here. But that won't solve the other liability issues that the tree represents for us. Hope that helps.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Since there were new claims made, the department would like a chance to ask some questions. Sir, you said that the water main continues to be damaged by the roots. What is your evidence for that?
So the evidence is that when it failed in 2020, there was a major leak.
Right, but has there been anything occurring since that time?
No,
No,
not.
okay. So there's,
Sometimes it's hard. We can tell from water usage when there's a big leak, and that's how we were alerted. That's how we found out 3 years ago. So.
but you have not seen any evidence of root intrusion since 2020? No, okay. And there's been no evidence of root intrusion in the gas or sewer lines, is that right?
No.
No, okay. And have you to date taken any efforts to grind down the roots under the sidewalk or otherwise prune the roots that have caused the uplift?
No, this is a 45-inch diameter tree and the roots are very close to the center of the tree is very close to the sidewalk. Efforts to prune those roots, I think to the degree that would address the liability of the sidewalk lift, would likely damage the tree. So, you know, we would pursue that course if we thought that it was viable. If we had more of a buffer from the center of the tree to the edge of the sidewalk, then that would certainly be more approachable. There's no root pruning or grinding solution that would address the what I see as the ongoing the safe and reasonable assumption that the roots are going to continue to damage our water line because the water line literally goes right under the center of the tree. So
And are you a certified arborist?
I am not. No.
Okay.
That's
The
why-
department has no more questions.
Thank you, sir. Excused.
Thank you.
The applicant have anyone else that he wishes to say anything? Okay, then we'll go to comments from the public. Do we have anybody online, Alicia, who wants to,
At this time, there's no one online. Is there anyone in the chambers?
is there anyone in chambers? No?
No one in the chambers as well.
Okay, then we'll bring it back to the board for discussion. Who wants to start?
I'll start. I'll go through the elements. Based on what I've heard and what I've seen, I'm not sure about the visual prominence of the tree to the site. Sort of down a street that goes toward the freeway. It's not on the main thoroughfare. In terms of element 2, the tree's contribution to aesthetic beauty. I don't have an eye for these things, but people seem to like the tree, so that probably rules in favor of the city. In terms of anxiety caused by the tree, it sounds like it's causing some damage to a water line. And there's definitely some stress about potential liability and who that would adhere to if someone got hurt by the tree roots. Is that offset enough by having liability insurance? 50-50, in my opinion. And then if we made a decision, there'd be for about mitigation, that's for later. So I'm not leaning one way or the other just yet. I'd like to hear what my other board members have to think. But I think totality of the circumstances, we can go either way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Kyle, and I can't remember your name. I'm sorry?
Dave, like that.
Oh, got it. For the presentation, and also for clearly exhibiting really good corporate citizenship here. I just really want to state that and really appreciate it. So I'm a little bit with you right now, Jason, in terms of I can convince myself either way to a certain extent right now. Let me just say why. I do find the tree. I haven't driven by it. I find the tree stunningly beautiful. And when I look at that neighborhood, the tree makes me very happy. With everything else there. And so again, as you said, this is all partially aesthetic, right? But I also do have a really strong inclination towards what Tice said about an ecosystem. And even though it is an industrial area, that I find that compelling. There are mitigation measures that are immediately possible to reduce the major liability that we're talking about, which is pruning, and doing something with that sidewalk and with the roots. We've got a difference of opinion here. Tice said, no, you can do something about those roots, man. And The other gentleman said, no, you can't do anything about those roots. It's going to damage the whole tree. I appreciated the question from the attorney, about qualifications to make this kind of a judgment and so again, I mean, no disrespect, sir. Really, I don't, but in terms of having to decide something, I feel like I have to go with somebody who is certified and qualified on this. So I'm inclined to say, okay, there is something that can be done with these roots. So you can deal with the roots, you can deal with the sidewalk, you can deal with the limbs, and all of the future potential problems, the water, the sewer, the gas. I feel like those are things that we could watch year by year. And then if that we are approaching some kind of a crisis on that, that's viable. And quite honestly, I come back to just the aesthetic thing for whatever. I think it's a beautiful tree and I think it's worth preserving if we can.
Bearing in mind that the degree of proof is by a preponderance of the evidence and the burden of proof is upon the applicant. And as you say, or I agree with both my colleagues that it's a very close case. I really don't think the applicant has met the burden of proof. It could go either way, but is it more likely than not, which is a preponderance of the evidence, and I don't find that burden having been met. So I would tend to agree with you, Ken, and I don't know whether, or not- yeah, well, but I mean, that's where we are at this point in time. Okay. At this point in time, I guess there's nothing more.
Well, I
for us
just
to
wonder,
do.
Justin, do you have any thought? You said earlier you wanted to, give your side and then you wanted to hear the two of us. I wonder if you have any more.
Yeah,
No, I think that's good. I don't,
Border here, and I don't know if I'm way
Sure.
out of line. Can someone confirm if the burden of proof?
I'm looking at that right now.
I think it's on the city.
I believe so as well. If you just give me a moment, I didn't want to interrupt them.
Sorry, under section 37-13B2, it says the appeals hearing board shall hear the appeal as a new matter. The original applicant has the burden of proof.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
so it looks like either way I go, looks like the decision's gonna go in favor of the city,
well,
but
I'm not so sure.
you're not so sure.
I'm like you guys. I'm
Yeah.
teetering here.
I always like to offer some remedy to members of the public that make their way up here. So you can appeal to Superior Court, or you can even talk to the city council about the ordinance itself. It's a 25-year-old ordinance, doesn't really let people cut down trees. Those are your other avenues, if you don't have success here. But Ken, you made a compelling argument. I can go either way on it. If you're leaning towards the city, then we should take a vote and go in that direction.
Okay.
Do you want mitigation measures associated? Or
We have a
no, we're not
motion?
cutting?
I
You want to keep,
I will keep the motion really simple. I think it's really simple. I will make a motion to deny the appeal.
There is a proposed decision in the packet.
Yeah.
It starts on page 42.
Yeah, I've read it. That's
Okay,
part of what I'm,
that's part of your motion. Okay, great.
yeah.
Is there a second? Well, before that, let's read the proposed decision to ourselves.
If the board members are ready, should we take a roll call?
We need, is there a second?
I'll second it.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Okay, Vice Chair Milich,
Yes.
Board Member Glenzer,
Yes.
and Board Member Chang.
Yes.
Okay, motion is passed 3-0.
That concludes our business today. Thank you for your presentations. And it really was awfully close. I mean,
Can I ask you guys a question? Business is concluded,
well, at this point in time, the meeting's over. Meeting's adjourned.
We actually have board member comments still. If you
Oh,
two
yeah.
gentlemen want to stick around, that's fine, but we still have a little bit more meeting to go.
Is there any
Okay.
comments from the board? No,
Okay.
no comments. Staff have
Okay.
any comments?
Meeting is adjourned at 10:52.